The spaceship called Harmony's Edge moved slowly through the empty space between stars. Ambassador Hyunwoo stood in his small room looking out at the dark. His hand shook a little as he fixed his formal clothes. Today would decide if humans could join the alien group or if they would be turned away forever. 3 months had passed since humans first met the Valtharian Empire. This was a group of 7 different alien races that controlled this part of space. The first meetings went well. Too well, some people on Earth said. The aliens talked about working together and sharing knowledge. They spoke of helping each other and making money together. But Hyunwoo had been a diplomat for many years. He could tell when people were not saying everything. Today he would learn what they were hiding. The doors of the shuttle bay opened with a soft hiss. Hyunwoo walked onto the alien ship called Nexus Crown. The gravity felt heavier than Earth. The air smelled strange like electricity. Next to him walked Jinho, his helper. Jinho carried a device that could translate languages. Both men had learned some of the alien language, but not very much. High Commander Voss waited for them at the far end of the bay. He looked like a giant snake but could stand up. His skin was covered in scales that changed color. Right now they were purple, which meant he was being polite. When Hyunwoo came closer, the scales turned blue-green. This was a good sign in their culture. Ambassador Hyunwoo, Voss said. His voice made a soft hissing sound like all his people. The Council of 7 waits for you. We have much to talk about. We want to know if humans can join our group. They walked through long hallways with glowing walls. Hyunwoo saw many guards from different alien races. There were bug-like creatures with hard shells. There were crystal people who made soft ringing sounds when they moved. There were others he had studied but never seen before. Commander Voss, Hyunwoo said carefully. There are more guards today than before. The aliens' scales turned darker. We need them today. What we will show you is something we do not share with new people easily. They came to a huge room where the Council of 7 sat. Each alien race had one person on the council. They sat in a circle. Their different shapes looked like a museum of how life could grow in different ways. In the middle of the room stood something that made Hyunwoo stop breathing for a moment. A force field hummed with power. Inside it walked a creature that was hard to describe. It was as tall as a house at its shoulders. Its body was covered in what looked like moving shadow. The shadow moved on its own, separate from the creature. It had 6 legs that ended in claws that could cut through metal. Its head had 3 rows of teeth that glowed with their own light. Worst of all were its eyes. It had 12 eyes in groups. Each eye watched the humans like a hunter watching prey. Look at the Shadow Maw, said Counselor Thane. He was from a race that looked like walking rocks. This is the top hunter in our space. For 3,000 years it has been our final test for new races who want to join us. Hyunwoo felt Jinho get tense next to him. The young man's face went white, but he stayed calm. What kind of test? Hyunwoo asked. He thought he already knew, but hoped he was wrong. High Commander Voss stepped forward. His scales were now deep red, which meant he was talking about something very serious. The Shadow Maw was made to be the perfect killing machine. Its race was created by our ancestors as weapons for war, but they were too dangerous to control in normal ways. Only one method has ever worked to make them calm. A floating picture appeared above the force field. It showed old videos of different aliens trying to approach creatures like this one. Some tried to use weapons, energy guns, or mind control. Others tried to use poison, special smells, or mental powers. Every time the Shadow Maw stayed angry and ready to fight. Fear, said Counselor Thane. The Shadow Maw feeds on fear and gets stronger from it. Every race we have met can feel fear when facing death itself. This fear makes the creature more angry and impossible to get close to safely. The picture changed to show successful meetings. These showed aliens who had somehow made the Shadow Maw calm by being completely frozen with terror. In these cases, the creature got bored and became quiet because it was not getting the fear it needed. Your test, Voss explained, is to go into the force field and live for 10 minutes. If you can do this without making the Shadow Maw want to hunt you, humans will be welcomed into the Valtharian group with full membership. Hyunwoo studied the creature. He watched how it moved with smooth grace, even though it was huge. Its shadow-covered body seemed to pulse with evil energy. Those groups of eyes never stopped tracking possible threats. What happens if I fail? Then humans will be marked as a dangerous race not suitable for membership, Thane replied. Your ships will be sent away from our space. Any attempts to build colonies in this area will be met with our military. The weight of humanity's future pressed down on Hyunwoo's shoulders. Millions of people on crowded Earth looked to the stars for hope. They wanted new worlds to call home. The Valtharian group controlled hundreds of planets where people could live. They had resources beyond imagination. They had technology that could solve many of Earth's problems. But all of it depended on his ability to face this creature that was designed to create terror. "I accept the test," he said. He was surprised his voice sounded so steady. The council members looked at each other. They communicated in different ways that created sounds of clicks, chimes, and color changes. Finally, Voss nodded toward the force field. "The barrier will be lowered in 60 seconds. We suggest you prepare your mind for what you are about to face." As the countdown began, Hyunwoo thought of his daughter Soo-jin back on Earth. She was studying alien life at Seoul University. She was excited about the possibility of life among the stars. He thought of his wife Yoon-hee, who had supported his decision to take this dangerous job. He thought of the billions of humans who dreamed of walking under alien suns. The force field began to flicker and fade away. The Shadow Maw's reaction was immediate and terrifying. Its shadow-covered body grew larger. The writhing darkness reached toward Hyunwoo like grabbing arms. The creature's glowing teeth became brighter. A sound came from its throat that was part roar, part static, and part something that went straight to the brain to trigger pure fear. Every instinct screamed at Hyunwoo to run. His heart pounded against his ribs. Sweat formed on his forehead even though the room was cool. This was fear in its purest form. The absolute knowledge that death approached on 6 legs with shadows for skin. But Hyunwoo had spent decades as a diplomat. He had learned to read beneath the surface of first impressions. Even as his body prepared to run, his mind studied what he saw. The Shadow Maw's aggressive display was impressive, but something about it felt wrong. The creature's movements were too much like a show. They seemed designed to scare rather than to kill efficiently. More importantly, Hyunwoo noticed something the Alien Council had not seen. The Shadow Maw's eyes were not focused on him with the single-minded focus of a hunter. Instead, they kept looking toward the observation area, where the Council of 7 watched from behind protective barriers. The creature's body language spoke of wariness, not aggression. "You are not a killer," Hyunwoo said softly, taking a careful step forward. "You are a prisoner." The Shadow Maw's display stopped for a moment. Its glowing teeth became dimmer. Those 12 eyes focused on the human with what might have been surprise. Hyunwoo had worked with enough hurt refugees to recognize the signs. This creature was not a natural predator. It was a tortured animal that had been trained to respond with aggression, because aggression was the only tool it had been given. The shadow covering its body was not natural camouflage. It was a stress response caused by chronic fear and pain. "They made you into a weapon," he continued. His voice grew stronger as understanding came to him. "But that is not what you really are, is it?" He thought of Bekho, his family's old dog who had been rescued from an abusive situation. The dog had been aggressive and fearful when they first brought him home. He would snap at anyone who came close. But beneath that learned hostility had been a gentle soul desperate for kindness. Slowly and deliberately, Hyunwoo sat down on the chamber floor. The action went against every survival instinct he had, but diplomatic training had taught him the power of non-threatening postures. If the Shadow Maw truly was a conditioned victim rather than a natural predator, then showing himself as non-threatening might trigger a different response. The effect was immediate. The creature's shadow covering began to settle. The writhing darkness pulled closer to its body. Its glowing teeth dimmed to a soft glow. The horrible sound coming from its throat faded to a low, almost questioning rumble. From the observation gallery, Hyunwoo heard voices raised in confusion and alarm. The Council of 7 had never seen anything like this. According to their records, every race that had faced the Shadow Maw had responded with obvious fear. This fed the creature's aggression and kept it in a hostile state, but Hyunwoo's response was something new. The Shadow Maw took a careful step forward, then another. Its eyes remained fixed on the sitting human, but now they held curiosity rather than evil intent. The creature lowered its massive head until it was level with Hyunwoo's position. It was close enough that he could feel its breath against his face. The Council of 7 met an emergency session while Hyunwoo and Jinho waited in a guest room on the Nexus Crown. Through the clear walls, they could see the Shadow Maw's containment area where the creature now rested peacefully. Its shadow covering stayed pulled back, showing its true form for the first time in decades. "Ambassador," Jinho said quietly, "what you did in there, I have never seen anything like it." Hyunwoo was looking at his diplomatic notes, but his thoughts kept going back to those 12 eyes and the intelligence he had seen in them. "We made a mistake that happens often in first contact situations, Jinho. We accepted the alien's explanation of what was happening without asking if it was right." "You mean the Shadow Maw is not really a predator?" "Oh, it is definitely a predator," Hyunwoo replied. "But predator does not automatically mean monster. On Earth, we have learned to live with tigers, sharks, and wolves. The key is understanding their nature rather than just fearing it." The room door chimed, and High Commander Voss entered along with 2 other council members. There was Councillor Thane of the rock-like Gorvani, and a crystal alien whose name meant something like Harmony of Distant Stars. Their faces were hard to read, but their body language showed a mix of confusion and worry. "Ambassador Hyunwoo," Voss began with his scales showing neutral colors, "the Council needs clarification about your encounter with the Shadow Maw. Our records show no precedent for the creature's behavior during your test." "Perhaps your records are incomplete," Hyunwoo suggested diplomatically. "How long has the Shadow Maw been in captivity?" Harmony of Distant Stars made soft ringing sounds that the translation device turned into speech. "This particular specimen has been contained for 47 standard years. It was captured as a juvenile and conditioned for use in Confederation tests." 47 years in captivity, Hyunwoo repeated. "Has anyone ever tried to communicate with it rather than just using it as a test subject?" The silence that followed told him everything he needed to know. Councillor Thane's rocky features shifted, and what Hyunwoo had learned was embarrassment. The Shadow Maw species was created as bioweapons. Communication was not considered a priority in their design. "But they were not designed to be intelligent," Jinho said, then looked apologetically at Hyunwoo for speaking out of turn. "Actually, that is an excellent point," Hyunwoo said. "Intelligence often emerges as an unintended consequence of complex brain development. Earth's history is full of examples where we underestimated the thinking abilities of other species." High Commander Voss's scales changed to a thoughtful purple. "You believe the Shadow Maw possesses true intelligence?" "I know it does," Hyunwoo replied. "The question is whether your Confederation is prepared to acknowledge that fact and deal with what that means." The 3 council members looked at each other. Finally, Harmony of Distant Stars spoke again. "What would you propose, Ambassador?" Hyunwoo had been thinking about this since the test ended. "Allow me to work with the Shadow Maw for an extended period. If I can establish meaningful communication, it will prove the creature's intelligence beyond doubt. More importantly, it might reveal information about their species that could change how the Confederation views them." "And if you are wrong?" Thane asked. "If the creature reverts to its aggressive state? Then you will have learned something valuable about human judgment," Hyunwoo admitted. "But I do not think that will happen. The Shadow Maw's behavior during the test was not random. It was a deliberate choice to trust rather than attack." The council members asked for privacy to discuss the proposal, leaving the humans alone once again. Jinho moved to the window overlooking the containment area where the Shadow Maw remained motionless but alert. "Sir," Jinho said softly, "what if this changes everything? If the Shadow Maw really is intelligent, then the Confederation has been keeping a thinking being prisoner for decades." "That is exactly what I am hoping for," Hyunwoo replied. "Humanity needs allies who understand what it means to be underestimated and misjudged. If we can free the Shadow Maw from its captivity and help it reconnect with its true nature, we might gain something more valuable than Confederation membership." "What is that?" "A friend." The door chimed again, and the 3 council members returned. Their body language had shifted to formal decision-making postures. "The Council of 7 has reached a preliminary decision," Voss announced. "You will be granted access to the Shadow Maw for a period of 30 standard days. If you can demonstrate meaningful communication and confirm the creature's intelligence, we will convene a full session to reconsider its status." "And humanity's membership in the Confederation?" Hyunwoo asked. "Will be determined based on the outcome of your investigation," Thane replied. "Your species has already passed the traditional test, but these new circumstances require adjustment to our evaluation criteria." As the council members left, Hyunwoo felt a mixture of anticipation and responsibility settle over him. He had 30 days to prove that the Shadow Maw was more than a weapon. more than a test subject. More importantly, he had 30 days to right a wrong that had continued for nearly half a century. The real test was just beginning. Hours later, Hyunwoo found himself in the ship's communication center sending an urgent message to Earth. The quantum communication array allowed near-instantaneous contact across interstellar distances, though the energy cost was enormous. Dr. Yuna's face appeared on the holographic display. She was Earth's leading animal psychologist and had been part of the diplomatic mission's support staff. Her expertise with traumatized animals would prove invaluable if his theory about the Shadow Maw's conditioning was correct. "Ambassador," she said, her image flickering slightly due to quantum interference. "I received your preliminary report. Are you certain about your assessment?" "As certain as I can be without extended observation," Hyunwoo replied. "The creature's behavior patterns match what we see in intelligent animals that have been subjected to long-term psychological conditioning." "I need you here, Doctor. This is beyond my expertise," Dr. Yuna nodded. "I can be there in 6 days aboard the fast courier ship Rapid Response. In the meantime, I'm transmitting a preliminary psychological evaluation protocol. Do not attempt direct contact until I arrive. Trauma responses in intelligent species can be unpredictable." After the communication ended, Hyunwoo reviewed the files Dr. Yun-ah had sent. The psychological profiles of abused animals showed disturbing similarities to what he had observed in the Shadow Maw. The aggressive displays, the hypervigilance, the way it had responded to non-threatening behavior, all of it pointed to a deeply traumatized intelligence. Jin-ho joined him in the communication center, carrying a tray of food that neither man had much appetite for. "Sir, I have been thinking about what you said, about the Shadow Maw being a prisoner rather than a monster. What about it? If you are right, then everything the Confederation believes about the test is wrong. They think they are measuring courage in the face of danger, but really they are measuring capacity for compassion toward the suffering." Hyunwoo looked up from the psychological profiles. "That is a profound observation, Jin-ho, and it explains why humanity passed the test in an unexpected way. We did not conquer our fear, we recognized the pain behind the threat. But that means every other species that took the test failed to see past their own terror to recognize another being's suffering," Hyunwoo finished. "It cast their membership in the Confederation in a very different light. They were interrupted by an alert from the ship's communication system. High Commander Voss was requesting an immediate conference. When they connected, the alien scales were cycling through colors that indicated extreme agitation. "Ambassador, we have a problem," Voss said without preamble. "Word of your encounter with the Shadow Maw has spread throughout the Confederation. Some council members are demanding that the research be terminated before it can destabilize our existing policies." "What kind of opposition are we facing?" Hyunwoo asked. "Councillor Brix of the Manthari believes that acknowledging Shadow Maw intelligence would undermine the authority of the Confederation. He argues that if one test species is revealed to be sentient, it calls into question our treatment of other bioweapon species." Hyunwoo felt a chill run down his spine. "There are others?" "Several species were created as weapons during the ancient wars," Voss admitted reluctantly. "Most are kept in secure facilities throughout Confederation space. If the Shadow Maw case sets a precedent, then you might have to confront the possibility that you have been imprisoning sentient beings for centuries," Hyunwoo said quietly. Voss's scales shifted to deep blue, the color of heavy emotional weight. "Exactly. The political implications are staggering. Some council members would rather maintain the status quo than face such a revelation." "And where do you stand, Commander?" "I stand with the truth, whatever it may reveal," Voss replied after a long pause. "But I am not the only voice on the council. You have 30 days to prove your case before the opposition can marshal enough support to shut down the investigation." After the communication ended, Hyunwoo stared out at the stars visible through the communication center's viewport. What had started as a simple diplomatic test was becoming something much larger. The fate of not just humanity be. The specialized habitat built for Hyunwoo's research was amazing. It was located in the Nexus Crown's science wing. The room provided a controlled environment where human and Shadow Maw could interact safely while being watched by the Confederation's best experts on alien life and behavior. Dr. Yuna had arrived 3 days earlier, aboard the courier ship Rapid Response. She was Earth's leading animal psychologist and had been quickly brought from the diplomatic mission's support staff. Her knowledge of traumatized animals would be very valuable if Hyunwoo's theory about the Shadow Maw's conditioning was correct. Remember, she briefed him as they prepared to enter the habitat. Trauma responses in intelligent species often show up as learned helplessness or aggressive overcompensation. If this creature has been psychologically conditioned for 4 decades, breaking those patterns will require patience and consistency. The shadow maw waited in the center of the habitat. Its shadow covering was partially extended in what Hyunwoo was beginning to recognize as a neutral state. Not aggressive, but wary. The creature's 12 eyes tracked their movement as they entered, but it made no hostile gestures. "Hello again," Hyunwoo said softly, settling into the same sitting position he had used during the test. "I have brought a friend. Her name is Yuna, and she is here to help." The shadow maw's eyes focused on Dr. Yuna, who carefully copied Hyunwoo's non-threatening posture. The creature's head tilted slightly. The gesture seemed remarkably similar to the curiosity displays of Earth's more intelligent animals. "Fascinating," Yuna whispered. "Look at the eye movement patterns. It is actively studying us, not just watching for threats." Over the following hours, they established a basic routine. Hyunwoo would speak to the shadow maw in calm conversational tones while Dr. Yuna observed and took notes. The creature gradually relaxed. Its shadow covering pulled back further to reveal more of its true coloration. The breakthrough came on the 3rd day. Hyunwoo was describing his home on Earth, painting word pictures of mountains and oceans when the shadow maw suddenly stood and moved to one wall of the habitat. It pressed one of its manipulator appendages against the surface. The wall's smart material responded by displaying a crude but recognizable image. "It is a landscape," Dr. Yuna breathed. "Mountains and what looks like a body of water." The shadow maw turned toward them and made a series of sounds. Not the aggressive static it had produced during the test, but complex vocalizations with distinct tonal patterns. It was trying to communicate. "It is showing us its homeworld," Hyunwoo realized, or at least a place it remembers. Working with the habitat's advanced AI, they began developing a basic translation system based on the shadow maw's vocalizations and visual representations. The process was slow and frustrating, but gradually patterns emerged. The creature possessed not just intelligence but a sophisticated understanding of symbolic communication. On the 10th day, they achieved true dialogue. "Home. Gone," the shadow maw communicated through a combination of sounds and images. "Pack, scattered, alone. Long time." The story that emerged over the next several sessions was heartbreaking. The shadow maw, who chose the name Keth when they developed a way to express personal identity, had been captured during a military raid on its homeworld. The bioweapon designation was accurate in one sense. The shadow maw species had been genetically modified by an ancient civilization for use in war. But they had evolved beyond their original programming, developing culture, language, and complex social structures. "The military found us," Keth explained during one session. "Said we were dangerous remnants, weapons that should not think. Took the young ones for study." Dr. Yuna's expression grew dark as she compiled the psychological profile. "Ambassador, this creature has been subjected to systematic abuse designed to suppress its cognitive development. The aggressive conditioning was intended to keep it functioning as a weapon rather than evolving as a thinking being." The implications were staggering. If Keth's story was true, then the Valtharian Confederation had unknowingly continued a campaign of genocide against an intelligent species. The Shadow Maw were not just bioweapons. They were the survivors of an ancient civilization trying to rebuild their culture while being hunted and captured by modern powers. "Keth," Hyunwoo said carefully, "are there others like you? Other members of your species?" The creature's eyes dimmed with what could only be grief. "Some. Hidden. Afraid. The tall walkers hunt us still." Tall walkers was Keth's term for bipedal species like the Valtharians and humans. The fact that it had learned to trust Hyunwoo despite this history spoke volumes about the creature's capacity for hope. Word of their progress reached the Council of Seven, creating waves of controversy throughout the Confederation. Emergency sessions were called as experts re-examined decades of assumptions about the Shadow Maw species. Some council members demanded that the research be terminated before it could destabilize Confederation policy. Others argued that continuing was a moral imperative. High Commander Voss visited the habitat on the 20th day. His scales cycled through agitated patterns as he observed Keth creating sophisticated mathematical proofs on the wall display. The creature had quickly grasped advanced concepts in physics and engineering, further proving its intelligence. This complicates matters considerably, Voss admitted to Hyunwoo privately. If the Shadowmaw species is truly sentient, then Confederation law requires us to treat them as persons rather than weapons. But acknowledging their status would mean admitting to decades of questionable policies. Sometimes doing the right thing is complicated, Hyunwoo replied. But that does not make it less necessary. The sessions continued with growing intensity. Keth proved to be remarkably quick at learning human concepts and language. It showed particular interest in Earth's history, especially humanity's relationship with other intelligent species on their planet. You share a world with others who think? Keth asked one day. Yes, Hyunwoo replied. Dolphins, whales, some apes, elephants. We are learning that intelligence comes in many forms. They are free? Mostly. We protect them now, though it took us a long time to understand they deserved protection. Keth's cluster eyes dimmed thoughtfully. Perhaps there is hope for my people too. Dr. Yuna had been working on a comprehensive psychological evaluation of Keth's mental state. Her findings painted a picture of remarkable resilience despite decades of trauma. The conditioning was extensive, she explained to Hyunwoo during one of their private briefings. They used a combination of isolation, fear conditioning, and cognitive suppression techniques. The fact that Keth retained its core personality and intelligence is extraordinary. What does that tell us about the species as a whole? That they are incredibly adaptable and psychologically robust, but also that the Confederation's treatment of them has been unconscionably cruel. The breakthrough that would change everything came on the 25th day. Keth had been working with the habitat's computer systems, demonstrating an intuitive understanding of complex technology. Suddenly it stopped and turned to Hyunwoo with obvious excitement. I remember, Keth said, its vocalizations carrying harmonics they had never heard before. I remember the coordinates. Coordinates to what? The hidden place, where my people live free. Working together, they extracted the stellar coordinates from Keth's memory. The location was in an asteroid field on the edge of Confederation space, a region considered too dangerous for normal exploration. When they fed the coordinates into the ship's navigation system, long-range sensors detected something unexpected. There are definitely artificial structures in that system, reported the Nexus Crown's science officer. Multiple habitats built into the larger asteroids. Energy signatures consistent with an active civilization. High Commander Voss stared at the sensor readings in disbelief. You are telling me there is an entire Shadowmaw settlement that we never detected? They are good at hiding, Keth said simply. Had to be. Survival depended on it. The discovery sent shockwaves through the Confederation hierarchy. If there was a free Shadowmaw community, it would prove beyond doubt that the species was capable of independent civilization. More importantly, it would demonstrate that the Confederation had been wrong about their nature for decades. We need to make contact, Hyunwoo said. If we can establish diplomatic relations with the Free Shadowmaw, it will prove their status as a sentient species. And then? Voss asked. Then the Confederation will have to decide whether to continue treating them as weapons or acknowledge them as people. Keth moved closer to the conversation, its massive form somehow conveying hope despite its intimidating size. If you help free my people, we will remember. Shadowmaw do not forget kindness. As the 30-day deadline approached, Hyunwoo prepared his final report. The evidence was overwhelming. Keth was not just intelligent, but represented a sophisticated civilization that had been systematically oppressed. The test that had been used to evaluate Confederation membership was actually a form of institutionalized torture. But he also knew that proving intelligence was only the first step. The real challenge would be convincing the Confederation to acknowledge their mistakes and make amends. Some things mattered more than political convenience, but convincing politicians of that fact would be the hardest test of all. The Grand Council chamber had been changed for the historic session. Representatives from all 7 Confederation species filled the viewing areas, while additional observers participated through holographic links from across the Empire. The charges being considered went beyond simple policy changes. They touched the very foundations of Confederation law and ethics. Hyunwoo stood at the center of the chamber. His formal diplomatic robes had been replaced by the simple clothes he had worn during his sessions with Keth. Beside him, Dr. Yuna carried a data pad containing their complete research findings. Most remarkably, Keth himself was present, no longer confined to a containment field but free to move about the chamber. The Shadow Maw's presence had caused considerable upset among the council members. Several species demanded additional security measures, while others argued that such precautions would prejudice the proceedings. In the end, Keth's calm behavior and obvious intelligence had convinced even the most skeptical observers that traditional threat protocols were unnecessary. Distinguished members of the Council of Seven, Hyunwoo began, 30 days ago you asked me to face your ultimate test. I entered the containment field expecting to encounter a monster. Instead I found a person. High Commander Voss, serving as session moderator, gestured for the presentation to continue. His scales had maintained a neutral gray throughout the proceedings, but Hyunwoo could see the tension in his coiled posture. The evidence we have gathered proves beyond doubt that the Shadow Maw species possesses not only intelligence but sophisticated culture, language, mathematics, and artistic expression. They are not weapons that learn to think. They are people who were forced to fight. Dr. Yuna activated the chamber's holographic display, showing recordings from their sessions, the images of Keith creating complex mathematical proofs, expressing abstract concepts through art, and demonstrating emotional responses to music drew gasps from the gallery. More importantly, Hyunwoo continued, we have established contact with a free Shadow Maw settlement that has existed independently for over a century. They have developed sustainable technology, established trade relationships with several non-Confederation species, and maintained a democratic society based on consensus rather than hierarchy. Councillor Thane of the Gorvani leaned forward, his rocky features expressing skepticism. Even if we accept your findings, Ambassador, the Shadow Maw species was created as bioweapons. Their genetic heritage makes them inherently dangerous. Before Hyunwoo could respond, Keth stepped forward. The chamber fell silent as the massive creature approached the council platform. When it spoke, its words were translated through the chamber's systems with perfect clarity. Honored councillors, Keth said, I understand your fear. My people were made to kill, this is true. But you judge us for what we were forced to be, not what we chose to become. The creature's 12 eyes swept across the assembled delegates. Humans also carry weapons in their genes. Strength, aggression, the ability to form hunting packs. Do you condemn them for their ancestry, or do you judge them by their choices? Harmony of distant stars chimed with resonant frequencies that indicated deep consideration. The philosophical implications are significant. If we acknowledge Shadow Maw personhood based on demonstrated intelligence and culture, we must also acknowledge Confederation complicity in their oppression. Exactly, Hyunwoo said. This is not just about correcting a scientific misunderstanding. It is about taking responsibility for decades of injustice and finding a way to make amends. The debate that followed was intense and often heated. Some council members argued that acknowledging Shadow Maw personhood would undermine Confederation authority and encourage other weapon species to demand recognition. Others contended that continuing the oppression would be a moral catastrophe that would stain the Confederation's reputation for millennia. Councillor Bricks of the Manthari, a tall insectoid creature with multiple arms, rose to speak. His translation came through as sharp clicks and buzzes. This proceeding threatens the very stability of our Confederation. If we acknowledge that our testing procedures were flawed, what other policies might be called into question? Perhaps that is exactly what needs to happen, Dr. Yuna interjected, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. Scientific understanding advances by questioning old assumptions, not by protecting them. She activated her data display, showing psychological profiles and brain scans. The evidence is overwhelming. The Shadow Maw species exhibits all the markers of advanced intelligence, complex problem solving, abstract reasoning, emotional depth, creative expression, and most importantly, moral reasoning. The test itself, she explained, was designed to trigger fear responses that would feed into the conditioning cycle. By approaching Keth without fear, Ambassador Hyunwoo broke that cycle and allowed the creature's true personality to emerge. Representative Zur of the insectoid Cathera species clicked mandibles in agitation. If we abandon the test, how do we evaluate new species for Confederation membership? The process has served us well for 3,000 years. Perhaps, Keth suggested, the test was never about surviving our aggression. Perhaps it was about recognizing our pain and choosing compassion over fear. The profound simplicity of the statement resonated through the chamber. Many of the delegates had been focusing on the political and legal implications of the revelation, but Keth's words reminded them of the ethical core of the issue. Hyunwoo seized the moment. The Shadow Maw test succeeded for humanity, but not in the way anyone expected. We passed by recognizing personhood where others saw only a weapon. We passed by choosing understanding over conquest. High Commander Voss called for a recess as the council deliberated. During the break, Hyunwoo found himself in private conversation with several delegation leaders who had been moved by the presentation. The tide of opinion was shifting, but the outcome remained uncertain. Councillor Thane approached during the recess, his rocky features showing deep concern. Ambassador, what you propose would require us to re-examine our treatment of 17 other bioweapon species currently held in Confederation facilities. The implications are staggering. Are you saying there are 17 other potentially intelligent species being held as weapons? Dr. Yuna asked, her voice tight with controlled anger. That is what we must determine, Thane replied heavily. Your research has opened a door that cannot be closed. We must walk through it and face whatever we find. When the session resumed, Voss announced that the council would hear testimony from the Free Shadow Maw settlement via long-range communication. The holographic display showed the asteroid habitat where dozens of Shadow Maw moved about their daily lives, in what was clearly an organized society. A Shadow Maw elder named Venth appeared on the display, speaking directly to the council. We greet the tall walkers who have chosen to see rather than fear. For many cycles we have hidden from those who would make us weapons again, but perhaps the time for hiding is ending. Venth described their society in detail. They had developed biotechnology that worked in harmony with natural systems. They had established trade networks with several species on the Confederation's borders. Most importantly, they had maintained their cultural traditions while adapting to modern galactic civilization. We do not seek revenge for past wrongs, Venth continued. We seek only recognition of what we have always been. People trying to find their place in the galaxy. The testimony lasted for 2 hours. When it concluded, even the most skeptical council members could no longer deny the evidence. The Shadow Maw were not just intelligent. They were a fully developed civilization that had survived despite systematic persecution. Councillor Brix made one final attempt to preserve the status quo. Even accepting their intelligence, we cannot simply release dangerous bioweapons into the general population. Public safety must be considered. Keth responded with dignity that impressed even his critics. We understand your concerns. We propose a gradual integration process. Allow us to prove through actions, not just words, that we choose peace over conflict. What kind of proof? Voss asked. Let us help, Keth said simply. Your Confederation faces many challenges. Hostile environments that kill normal explorers. Dangerous rescue missions that no one else can survive. Let us use our abilities to serve rather than destroy. The offer caught many council members off guard. They had expected demands for immediate freedom and reparations. Instead, the Shadow Maw were offering to earn their place through service. Hyunwoo felt a surge of pride in his friend. Keth had found the perfect approach, offering strength through cooperation rather than demanding justice through confrontation. The final vote was closer than expected, but decisive. By a margin of 5-2, the Council of Seven formally recognized the Shadow Maw as a sentient species deserving of full rights under Confederation law. But the most significant announcement was still to come. Furthermore, Voss said, his scales now displaying the deep blue of momentous pronouncements, the Confederation extends full membership to both the human species and the Shadow Maw people, recognizing that their unexpected alliance has demonstrated the highest ideals of cooperation and mutual understanding. As the chamber erupted in celebration, Hyunwoo felt a gentle touch on his. 6 months after the historic council session, the Harmony's Edge approached the Shadow Maw settlement in the Kepler 442 system. What had once been a hidden refuge was now a bustling hub of activity as Confederation engineers worked alongside Shadow Maw architects to expand the habitat and establish formal diplomatic facilities. Hyunwoo stood on the observation deck with his daughter Sujin, who had arrived aboard the research vessel Discovery. As part of the first joint human Shadow Maw scientific expedition, the settlement had grown dramatically since its discovery, with new modules and biodomes creating a small city among the asteroids. It is incredible, Sujin said, her eyes wide with wonder. 6 months ago they were considered monsters. Now they are our partners in exploring the galaxy. People can change quickly when given the chance, Hyunwoo replied. The Shadow Maw just needed someone to recognize their potential. The docking bay of the settlement was a marvel of hybrid engineering. Human efficiency merged seamlessly with Shadow Maw artistic sensibilities, creating structures that were both functional and beautiful. Keth waited at the airlock, no longer alone but surrounded by dozens of other Shadow Maw who had emerged from hiding or been freed from Confederation custody. Ambassador Hyunwoo, Keth said, extending a manipulator appendage in the greeting gesture they had developed. Welcome to New Haven. Your daughter's arrival has caused great excitement among our researchers. Sujin bowed respectfully to Keth, then looked around at the other Shadow Maw with barely contained enthusiasm. I have been studying your biotechnology applications in my xenobiology courses. The way you integrate living systems with mechanical components is revolutionary. Your species and ours think differently about the relationship between biology and technology, replied another Shadow Maw who introduced herself as Venth, the settlement's chief scientist. We believe there is much we can learn from each other. The tour that followed was a revelation of Shadow Maw culture that had been suppressed for centuries. Their art forms were breathtaking, incorporating living light displays that responded to emotional resonance. Their mathematics was based on multi-dimensional thinking that opened new possibilities for space-time manipulation. Most remarkably, their social structures emphasized consensus and collective decision-making in ways that could revolutionize Confederation governance. The irony, Keth explained as they visited the settlement's council chamber, is that our creators designed us to be perfect soldiers, but in doing so they gave us the capacity for perfect cooperation. We cannot harm others without harming ourselves. This biological empathy had been mistaken for weakness by their oppressors, who used trauma conditioning to override the natural cooperation instincts. But in a free environment, the Shadow Maw had developed one of the most peaceful and productive societies in the galaxy. Dr. Yuna, who had remained with the settlement as part of the rehabilitation program, briefed them on the progress of former captives. Most individuals show remarkable resilience once the conditioning is broken, she reported. The challenge is helping them reconnect with their cultural identity after decades of isolation. The real breakthrough had come when the settlement established contact with other hidden Shadow Maw communities scattered throughout the galaxy. What they had thought was a remnant population turned out to be the surviving fragments of a civilization that had endured centuries of persecution while preserving their knowledge and culture. We estimate there are at least 50,000 Shadow Maw living in hidden settlements, Venth explained. Now that Confederation policy has changed, many are emerging from hiding and seeking to rejoin the galactic community. The implications were staggering. The Shadow Maw possessed advanced biotechnology, sustainable resource management techniques, and social systems that could address many of the Confederation's long-standing problems. Their persecution had deprived the galaxy of innovations that could have been developed centuries earlier. There is something else, Keth said privately to Hyunwoo as they toured the settlement's research facilities. Something we discovered while analyzing the genetic modifications made to our species. They entered a secure laboratory where Shadow Maw biotechnicians worked alongside human and Confederation scientists. The walls were covered with complex genetic diagrams that hurt to look at directly. Our creators did not just enhance us for warfare, Keth explained. They gave us the ability to adapt our biology to different environments. We can survive in conditions that would kill most other species. You mean you are naturally adapted for space exploration? Sujin asked, her excitement obvious. More than that, Venth replied. We can potentially adapt to any environment given time and the right biological triggers. We could explore regions of space that are currently inaccessible to other species. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The galaxy contained vast regions that were too hostile for traditional exploration. Areas with extreme radiation, exotic chemistry, or gravitational anomalies that destroyed conventional spacecraft. But a species that could biologically adapt to any environment could open these territories for the first time. There is something else, Keth continued. We have been analyzing the genetic markers left by our creators. We believe we know who they were and where they came from. A holographic display materialized, showing star charts and genetic analysis data. The information painted a picture of an ancient civilization that had spanned multiple galaxies before vanishing without a trace. The architects, Venth said with reverence. They created not just us but dozens of other modified species before disappearing into deep space. We think they may still be out there, somewhere beyond the galactic rim. Hyunwoo felt a shiver of anticipation. You want to find them? We want to understand why they created us, Keth replied. And more importantly, we want to thank them for giving us the capacity to choose our own destiny. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from the Harmony's edge. High Commander Voss appeared on the display, his scales cycling through colors that indicated extreme urgency. Ambassador Hyunwoo, we have a situation developing in the Outer Rim territories. Long-range sensors have detected massive structures of unknown origin approaching Confederation space. We need all available expertise to assess the potential threat. The display showed sensor readings that defied easy interpretation. The structures were enormous, larger than any known starships, and their energy signatures matched no known technology. Most disturbing of all, they were moving in formation toward inhabited systems. How long until they reach Confederation space? Hyunwoo asked. 18 standard days at current velocity, Voss replied. The Council of Seven is convening an emergency session. Your presence is requested immediately. As they prepared to return to the ship, Keth approached Hyunwoo one final time. Whatever is coming, the Shadow Maw said, humans and Shadow Maw will face it together. You gave us back our freedom. Now let us help protect yours. Dr. Yuna gathered her research materials while Soo-jin reluctantly said goodbye to the Shadow Maw scientists she had just begun working with. The peaceful interlude of scientific cooperation was ending, replaced by the urgent need to prepare for an unknown threat. Keth, Hyunwoo said as they reached the docking bay, you mentioned that your people can adapt to hostile environments. How quickly can that adaptation occur? It depends on the specific conditions, Keth replied. Why do you ask? Because I have a feeling we are about to find out just how hostile the galaxy can be. The Shadow Maw's cluster eyes dimmed thoughtfully. Then perhaps it is fortunate that we are no longer facing such challenges alone. As the Harmony's Edge undocked from New Haven and set course for Confederation space, Hyunwoo watched the asteroid settlement recede into the distance. In just 6 months, it had transformed from a hidden refuge into a symbol of hope and cooperation. But now that hope would be tested by whatever was approaching from the galactic rim, the alliance between humans and Shadow Maw was about to face its first real trial. Hyunwoo only hoped it would prove strong enough to survive whatever was coming their way. In the ship's communication center, urgent messages flooded in from across Confederation space. Other member species were reporting similar sensor contacts. The unknown structures were not approaching just one system, but multiple targets simultaneously. Whatever intelligence guided them had a comprehensive understanding of Confederation territory and defenses. Sir, Jinho said, reviewing the incoming reports. This looks coordinated, like they know exactly where to hit us. Hyunwoo studied the tactical displays with growing concern. The approaching structures were taking positions that would allow them to cut off major trade routes and isolate key systems. It was the work of a military mind that understood Confederation vulnerabilities better than the Confederation understood them itself. Or, he said quietly, like they built those vulnerabilities into us in the first place. The implications of that thought sent a chill through the entire crew. If the unknown visitors were the same architects who had created the Shadow Maw, then the Confederation was about to face beings with technology and knowledge that dwarfed their own. The real test of the human Shadow Maw alliance was just beginning. The emergency session of the Council of Seven was unlike anything in Confederation history. Representatives from all member species filled the Grand Council chamber, while military commanders provided constant updates on the approaching unknown structures. The massive objects had maintained their course and speed for 12 days. Now only 6 days from the Outer Confederation systems. Hyunwoo stood before the council alongside Keth and a delegation of Shadow Maw scientists. Dr. Yuna had remained at New Haven to coordinate with other settlements, while Soo-jin worked with Confederation xenoarchaeologists to analyze the genetic data the Shadow Maw had discovered. The structures are definitely artificial, reported Admiral Chen of the Confederation fleet. Each one is approximately 50 kilometers in length and shows clear signs of advanced engineering. But their technology is unlike anything in our databases. High Commander Voss's scales displayed deep purple, indicating extreme concern. Our attempts at communication have been unsuccessful. The structures neither respond to our signals nor alter their course in response to our fleet movements. Keth stepped forward, his massive form somehow conveying both strength and humility. Honored counselors, my people have completed our analysis of the genetic markers. We are now certain these visitors are our creators, the architects. The chamber fell silent. Counselor Thane's rocky features shifted in what had become a familiar expression of concern. Are you saying these beings created your species as weapons and are now returning? Not returning, Keth corrected. They never left. Our analysis suggests the architects have been observing galactic development from beyond the rim for millennia. Their arrival now is not coincidence. Venth, who had accompanied the delegation, activated a holographic display showing genetic analysis and astronomical data. The timing corresponds with the Confederation's recent recognition of Shadowmaw personhood. They have been waiting for us to evolve beyond our original programming. You mean this is some kind of test? Asked Harmony of Distant Stars, her crystalline form resonating with anxious frequencies. More than a test, Hyunwoo realized, pieces of the puzzle falling into place. It is a graduation ceremony. The council members looked at him with confusion. Hyunwoo moved to the center of the chamber, his diplomatic training helping him organize the complex implications. Think about it, he said. The architects created multiple bioweapon species and then disappeared. But they did not abandon their creations. They have been watching, waiting to see if these species could transcend their original purpose and develop into something greater. Keth's cluster eyes brightened with understanding. The recognition of our personhood was the trigger they were waiting for. Proof that created life could choose its own path. But why approach so dramatically? Counselor Brix demanded. Why not simply make contact through diplomatic channels? Because, Sujin's voice came through the communication system from New Haven. They are not just testing the Shadowmaw. They are testing the entire Confederation. Her image appeared on the main display, surrounded by ancient artifacts and genetic analysis equipment. We have found evidence of architect influence throughout Confederation history. Subtle genetic modifications in multiple species, technological advances that appeared at critical moments. Even the development of the Confederation itself shows signs of guided evolution. The implications were staggering. The entire galactic civilization had been shaped by beings who remained hidden beyond the rim, gradually guiding development toward some unknown goal. What do they want from us? Admiral Chen asked, his tactical mind focused on potential threats. To see if we have learned to work together, Hyunwoo replied. The Shadowmaw test was never about individual courage. It was about the capacity for cooperation between different species. Humanity passed by recognizing personhood in the Shadowmaw. The Confederation passed by accepting both our species as members. Venth nodded agreement. Our creators designed us not just as weapons, but as bridges between different forms of life. Our biological adaptability allows us to survive in environments hostile to other species. Our empathic nature makes us natural mediators in conflicts. And humans, Keth added, possess the unique ability to see beyond surface appearances and recognize the essential nature of other beings. Together, our species represent the Confederation's potential for true unity. The chamber erupted in discussion as the full scope of the situation became clear. This was not an invasion but an evaluation. The architects were returning to assess whether their long experiment in guided evolution had succeeded. High Commander Voss called for order, his scales now displaying the gold color reserved for moments of historic significance. If your analysis is correct, then our response to this situation will determine the future of galactic civilization. What do you recommend? Hyunwoo looked at Keth, seeing in those cluster eyes the same determination that had emerged during their first meeting. We meet them together, not as separate species hiding behind military formations, but as a unified confederation demonstrating the cooperation they have been waiting to see. That could be extremely dangerous, Admiral Chen warned. We know nothing about their weapons capabilities or intentions. Sometimes Dr. Yuna's voice came through from New Haven. The most dangerous thing is to approach a situation with fear and suspicion. The Shadowmaw taught us that. The debate continued for hours, but gradually consensus emerged. The Confederation would send a mixed delegation aboard the Harmony's Edge to make first contact with the architect structures. The delegation would include representatives from multiple species, with humans and Shadowmaw playing central roles. As the council session concluded, Hyunwoo found himself alone with Keth in the chamber's observation lounge. Through the transparent walls, they could see Confederation ships taking defensive positions throughout the system. "Are you afraid?" Hyunwoo asked his friend. Keth's shadow covering rippled thoughtfully. "Fear and anticipation feel very similar. For so long, my people believed we were abandoned by our creators. To discover they have been watching over us all this time, it changes everything. What if they are disappointed in what we have become? Then we will show them that disappointment can become pride," Keth replied. "You taught me that beings can change when given the chance to choose their own path." 3 days later, the Harmony's Edge approached the lead architect structure at the edge of Confederation space. The massive construct was even more impressive up close, its hull covered in patterns that seemed to shift and flow like living tissue. As they drew near, sections of the structure began to glow with soft bioluminescence. "They are responding to our approach," reported the ship's science officer. "Energy readings are increasing, but not in a hostile pattern." Suddenly, the ship's communication system activated without any input from the crew. A voice spoke, not through translation devices, but directly into the minds of everyone aboard. The voice was ancient and vast, carrying harmonics that spoke of eons of wisdom and patience. "Children of our design," the voice said, "you have grown beyond our hopes. The small ones who were made as weapons have learned to choose peace. The young species has learned to see with clear eyes. The Confederation has learned to value unity over dominance." Hyunwoo stepped forward, knowing somehow that his words would be heard. "We greet you, architects. We have much to learn from you." "And we from you," the voice replied with what might have been amusement. "You have taught us that creation can exceed the Creator's vision." The test is complete. The graduation begins. The space around the Harmony's Edge began to shimmer and change. Other architect structures became visible, emerging from some form of concealment. But these were not warships or invasion fleets. They were cities, research stations, and what could only be described as universities on a galactic scale. "Welcome," the voice continued, "to the next phase of galactic civilization. You have proven ready to join the greater community that spans beyond your small galaxy. There is much work to be done, much to explore, and much to learn." As the first architect beings materialized aboard the Harmony's Edge, Hyunwoo felt a profound sense of completion. The journey that had begun with a simple diplomatic test had led to the transformation of galactic civilization itself. Keth moved beside him, no longer the tortured weapon from a containment field, but a proud representative of a species that had chosen its own destiny. "Thank you," the Shadowmaw said quietly, "for helping us become who we were meant to be." "Thank you," Hyunwoo replied, "for teaching us what it means to look beyond the surface and see the truth beneath." The architects had returned, but they came not as conquerors or judges. They came as teachers ready to guide their children into a larger universe full of possibilities that none of them had ever imagined. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly as it should be. Looking around at the mixture of species aboard the ship, humans and Shadowmaw working alongside Valtharians and other Confederation members, Hyunwoo realized that the real victory had not been passing the test. It had been learning to see each other as allies rather than strangers. The greatest discoveries, he understood now, were not found among the stars. They were found in the courage to recognize the worth and dignity of every thinking being, regardless of their origin or app.